New round of Atlantic tropical activity with Philippe and other areas of interest. And now the latest around the wide world of tropics. Tropical Weather Bulletin for September 25th. Well, we're finally back with the Tropical Weather Bulletins. I've been away for a while due to my time away on the Eastern Tour and trying to get back on schedule. 60 storms so far this year were code yellow, and that's for the Western Pacific actually, which we'll be looking at in a moment. But first, in the Atlantic, it's day 117 of hurricane season. We've got Philippe there, an active tropical storm, the remnants of Ophelia, and an extratropical version of Nigel still active, well up towards the northeast. Two areas of interest, moderate chances behind Philippe there for a system, and a system that's starting to show up there in the Western Caribbean, 10% right now. In the Eastern Pacific, we've got Tropical Depression 14E on day 133 of hurricane season there. We had, of course, Kenneth, which died off not too long ago, a couple of days ago now, and nothing else on the horizon. Western Pacific, we've got these three systems that are currently active right now. That's 70% chance being the most immediate off the coast of Vietnam, and then some of its energy could contribute to a second system that forms just behind it eventually on day 5 or 6. 30% chance on that one, and a 10% area not far from the Mariana Islands to the west there into the Philippine Sea. So Western Pacific might have one or two more storms to its name pretty soon. North Indian Ocean, nothing much going on there right now. So here's Philippe, currently 2,041 kilometers from Barbados, 2,150 from Martinique, 2,160 from Guadeloupe, 2,204 from Antigua, and 2,931 from Bermuda. It is currently moving towards generally a westerly direction, and it will start to curve northwesterly eventually later on in the forecast period. Will it get towards Bermuda? Yeah, not sure yet, but it will probably miss and recurve completely towards the north and then northeast. Tropical storm at National Hurricane Center expecting not far from hurricane status at peak. Well, here it is on the satellite imagery right now, and to be honest, it's looking pretty good as we look at this imagery here. Very expansive, especially on the eastern side, so wind shear might have a bit of a job, which is what the National Hurricane Center think is going to really prevent this storm from getting much stronger. But looking at it right now, it's certainly got a decent chance of fighting off some of that wind shear, at least in the short term. You can see its effects there on that western and southwestern side, but the storm is currently fighting it off pretty well. Here's the invest in the Western Pacific, that high chance of development, already getting some rotation going there with some significant convective tops, especially over Vietnam along the coast there. It's going to be a high rainfall producing event, this one, and potentially the system behind it too. Here's the radar imagery, which looks interesting. You can clearly see the low level influence of this system. I'm not sure what's going on at the upper levels there, whether that's a glitch or not, but interesting imagery. And here is another area of interest just off the northern part of the Mariana Islands right now. That's an invest, just blowing up some convection there. That's probably not going to last much longer, and eventually we'll have a new system becoming more prominent to its south. And this is Tropical Depression 14, a tiny system, as you can clearly see, partially exposed and really struggling, probably not going to get a name. Looks like it may just be about to fall apart. Sea surface temperatures then look like this, still very warm along the coast of Pacific Mexico, with temperatures over 30 degrees Celsius for the most part, with a few areas extending further out. The Atlantic piping hot in the Gulf of Mexico, a few spots of 30 to 32 degrees Celsius, same too around the Bahamas and in parts of the Caribbean Sea, and out over the open Atlantic with a few cool spots from the recent storms around Bermuda. In the Western Pacific, things still looking good here as well. Temperatures 30 degrees plus in quite a few spots there. Philippine Sea and South China Sea especially. Not too much to say there, not many cool spots to note, and those warm waters extending all the way up through most of Japan. Here's the North Indian Ocean, Bay of Bengal looking okay, temperatures still decent, pushing 30 degrees Celsius. Eastern part of the Arabian Sea also still warm. Southwest Indian Ocean is starting to come back a little bit. Of course, the season will start fairly soon, in a month or two, and the Australian region also starting to see a small increase in those temperatures as those temperatures get warmer across the southern hemisphere. We just had the equinox a few days ago, and in the South Pacific there, temperatures also rebounding slowly. Sea surface temperature anomalies look like this. The Western Pacific is close to average in the open ocean, but in the minor sea areas, the South China Sea especially, it's well above average. Eastern Pacific is above average near the coast of Mexico, the important area, but off towards the Central Pacific it's really much cooler, which is why storms have been struggling. In the Atlantic it's generally warm as a rule, except for one or two cold trails caused by recent hurricanes such as Nigel. And this is the Atlantic oceanic heat content, really extraordinary amounts in the Caribbean Sea there, and a few spots over the Bahamas as well. Got to be really concerned about that. Eastern Pacific still has a few good areas there off the coast of Mexico, quite a large distance, and in the Western Pacific some decent values as well. Still that corridor along the Philippine Sea through the Mariana Islands looking good. This is what the GFS model has in store over the next 5 days, with Mark Philippe there, which is moving gradually northwestwards. The remnants of Ophelia there, which probably won't regenerate, but still traceable for a while. And then that third area of interest to the southeast of Philippe there, which could also become a tropical storm and pretty much follow it, but slightly displaced towards the south. Also, a lot of exotropical activity going on in those higher latitudes in that period. Western Pacific looks like this. You can quickly see that system that moves into Vietnam initially, then that second system that forms but that becomes a much more potent system, GFS thinks, becoming a substantial typhoon, although no other models really going with that yet, although they do have a surface low. Then this third area of interest that we've got a low chance for right now that will start to emerge just near the coast of Guam. There it is, moving on towards the west-northwest, day 4 and 5. Regardless of whether one or both of these storms form near Vietnam, it does look like there's going to be a significant double rainfall event that occurs, and you can see both of those tracks, the first one there in Vietnam, and here's the second one coming in now from that potential typhoon. So we're looking at maybe some very high amounts of rainfall over the next 7-day period. Let's treat this as a worst case scenario, but we could be looking in excess of 20 inches of rainfall there for some of those coastal areas and inland, extending up to around 600 millimeters, and some really high values off the coast, and even further north as well, 10 inches, and inland over the border into Laos as well, probably getting up towards 500 millimeters in a few spots. So really significant rainfall amounts from these two systems. Longer range Atlantic then, there's Philippe continuing northeastwards, and that system behind it, maybe a development or two developments in the western Atlantic there possibly, or maybe even three spinning up, but certainly one near the Bahamas which looks interesting, and then turns towards the north, moving quite slowly towards the end of that period. Thankfully all of these systems, at least during that forecast time, out at sea, except for that one near the Bahamas that just starts off there and then starts moving away. Western Pacific during this same time, you can see that powerful typhoon moving into Vietnam, but not much confidence in that forecast yet. What else happens in the meantime towards day 10? Nothing much over there in the Western Pacific, but maybe another developing system approaching the Mariana Islands there. A close-up view of this storm once again. There it is, making landfall. Very powerful, probably at peak category 3, maybe even 4. But once again, that is just the GFS model. I don't think the Euro model has it at all, and the other significant models only have a weak system. That's all the serious stuff done. You can scan the barcode and take a look at the Force 13 merch store, where we have all of our usual products on there, and of course, it never happened whilst I was away, did it? We are still waiting for Hone, and there it is. I may as well wear that shirt at this rate. In the silly range then, the Atlantic, day 10 to 16, there's that system that becomes a potent hurricane actually as it speeds up towards the northeast, and potentially a really powerful landfall there for Atlantic Canada once again. And the second system moving in behind there as a hurricane through southern Florida. So that, of course, is very long range for both of these, and it's a very volatile Atlantic. So really poor confidence in this. I would not take it as it's going to happen at all at this point, but something to look out for in the future there. 1 or 2 systems possible for the US East Coast and Southeast. So here is the Western Pacific as well, that new late system there, potentially becoming a typhoon, and then another one in the South China Sea there. So a relatively active Western Pacific with 2 more typhoons, but that, of course, once again is very long range. Not much confidence here either, as it happens, with lots of little low pressure systems and very large gyric systems moving around the Philippine Sea during this time. You can talk about all of that on our Discord server, discord.gg/force13 for tropical weather and general weather chat, with over 3,700 weather watchers from around the world. Well, on this day, it was 5 years ago, struggling to count just then, when we had Super Typhoon Trami, which had just come off its Category 5 peak on September 25th and was gradually moving towards the northwest. Extremely impressive storm, beautiful looking. We also had Tropical Storm Kirk, which had formed in the Atlantic. Rosa was forming as well in the Eastern Pacific, and Leslie had just weakened from its first stint as a subtropical storm, I should say, to a subtropical depression. Of course, it would later regenerate and become fully tropical. Back to today, and of course we've had a lot of names since I was last here. The next name in the Atlantic then is Rena. In the Eastern Pacific it's Lydia, and in the Central Pacific, though, no movement here, it is still Hone. I do believe there were 1 or 2 close calls whilst I was away there as well. It's been 22 days since I last did a tropical weather bulletin, so it's good to be back. In the Western Pacific, the next name on this 5 is Koinu. In the North Indian Ocean, it is still Tej. No more significant systems there in a good while. And in the Australian region, coming up, if we get some storms, it's Jasper. Southwest Indian Ocean starts off its season with Alvaro, and in the South Pacific, our next name is still Lola. That's all from tonight's Tropical Weather Bulletin. We hope to resume normal service now, and we'll be back tomorrow.